May 2024 meeting, the Alamance County Planning Board will come to order. Have you got the roll? I have.
Yes, sir. We have 6 present, one more than needed for a quorum.
Okay.
We ready to go?
All right. Has everybody had a chance to read through the minutes from last month's meeting?
Yes, sir.
Anybody got any thing you won't change, or we're good with it?
I move to approve.
I second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Okay, opposed? No, I think we're good with that. Okay, public comments. So, Mr. Jeff Thronberg?
Yes.
Okay.
Good evening, board. So my name is Jeff Thronberg, general contractor here in Alamance County, and also the president of the Alamance County Home Builders Association. So in observing the meetings concerning the raising the acreage from 1 to 2, I've heard a lot of numbers thrown around, and none of them were current and accurate, which confused me because the county should be run as a business. I can't run my business on assumptions or just hearsay. I also heard increasing lot sizes, protecting integrity of Alamance County. And the people of Alamance County are the greatest asset. And while I recognize not all change is good, it is inevitable, especially with the current and expected growth. So changes should be made to benefit our youth, who are in fact are our future. Us as leaders in the county should be the solution and not the problem. Also, there was a discussion about the development and the starter homes on Highway 62 North. And it was questioned at the last meeting if that's what we want for Alamance County. So Nathan Sawyer, who spoke 2 months ago, built a majority of those houses. And beginning this January, I purchased 2 lots out there to build starter homes, which is, for my company, is not necessarily profitable, but I wanted to build a quality home for a young couple that could raise a family in. So what I've done is I brought a spreadsheet here. This is 4 pages, how I itemize every line item when I go to build a house. So these are true costs, true numbers. So the address I'm talking about, and I'll try to speed this up, is 3637 Highway 60 North, 2 North, which was in that area I was talking about. 1,493 square foot house with a 297 square foot unfinished bonus room. The 1 acre lot was 46,000. A well, depending on the depth, which is a little bit deeper out there, 10 to 14,000. And the septic system conventional could be anywhere from 9 to 11,000, depending on who does it and the conditions. So you got $71,000 in the dirt, which is a flat lot with no clearing. So you add that to the cost. This house would be $365,326 at a 30-year rate, which is current from Fidelity Bank, local bank here in Burlington, 7.125%, 5% down payment, which is $18,616.30. That is a payment of $2,383. That is before insurance, taxes, and PMI, which takes that payment to $2,798 a month. If you take a 2 acre lot, which I give you all the numbers last week or last month, was the median price $72,000 in Alamance County. That raises the lot cost $26,000. Now and so that takes the house to $391,326. 5% down payment, $19,916.30. The insurance, taxes, and PMI now takes that payment to $3,200. That is a $402 a month increase. Same house from 1 acre to 2 acre. Take a 32-year-old male who makes $65,000 a year. He takes home $4,350 a month after taxes. You subtract that $3,200 a month payment. It's $1,150 a month left over, or $38.33 a day. So those are real numbers. I encourage you to reach out to home builders, developers, or whatever before we make this decision, because this is going to put a lot of people out of their realm of being able to afford a house, only by just increasing the lot size. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Chris Faust. Right.
Good evening, board. Chris Faust, live on 62 South. Former dairy farmer, tobacco farmer. Didn't ever make wagon wheels, but I wouldn't be doing that neither at this day. There's no farm, there's no money in the dairy, and ain't no money in tobacco. So we started developing land and putting in septic tanks. I know the farms is people trying to protect the farms, but it's changing. Life's changing. I used to say, don't like it, go to Montana. When we started down here, I've said it more than now Montana's growing. It's inevitable. If you want these jobs, you've got to supply housing. Just like he said, we develop land. I see the numbers. We've moved out of the cities because we can't make the numbers work no more. I've heard y'all's numbers of this, the lots for 20,000 or whatever. You cannot, just to put the road in now is what the lots were 2 years ago, just to put the road in. Figure a lot, and I know they've y'all throwing darts at Salem Woods. We bought that already developed. We've changed a few lot lines, but we've got one down on Belmont Alamance Road. I invite you to go, Logan Ridge, right in front of the fire station. That's not a bad looking subdivision. Houses were affordable and they look nice. And I understand you don't want them stacked on each other and all the farmland cut up. I get that, but 2 acres is 2 acres. We've got some 2 acre lots. 2 acres in some places will be good, but there's also places an acre. I could agree to an acre, but in some places we're doing small patio homes with off-site septic systems that are nice houses for retired people that look good. Just all around the board, they're nice for, there's a certain people that buy that. And I do a lot with Jeff, and I know what he's talking about. The numbers in the past few years is just, fuel drives everything. You know how it is. So I hope y'all, because if you make the decision for 2 acres, and I understand you may consider certain subdivisions smaller, but I'm afraid that 2 acres is going to be where you hold our feet to the fire, and it's going to be unsustainable. So, and some people don't want the growth, so they'll say go to Randolph or Davis and Orange and Guilford. But I think we do need housing here. I don't know how many of y'all got kids, but if you got kids, you should want a little bit of growth around here, for residential growth for housing. So I just think if you all want the jobs, the county's bringing the jobs in, the jobs are coming here. They're coming here hard. This place ain't gonna look the same in 10 years. So I agree with some changes maybe, but just be careful or it's coming whether we want it or not. So just be careful what you want. Thanks.
Mr. Faust, thank you.
Yes, sir.
So that's everybody that signed up for public comments. Okay. So the public comment section closed. All right. Has anybody here got any response to anything said?
I'll make a statement. I haven't really
Okay.
planned it out, but, there have been questions from the public wondering what our intent is as board members. And some saying we're trying to look out for ourselves versus instead of trying to look out for the county. I was fortunate enough to be born and raised here in Alamance County and chose to be on the board to serve the county with what little expertise I may have. And, the perspective I bring is, having that background growing up in more of a rural type lifestyle, and having the privilege to do that. But also combined with that is, trying to start a family. My wife and I were looking to build a house right now, and I personally have gone through some struggles and challenges of finding, certain builders or certain resources and putting the numbers together to make it work. So I'm going through those struggles firsthand. So that's the perspective I bring. And, I don't know if others on the board share the sentiment or not, but I feel like at least trying to use that background to look out for the county. So just wanted to share that.
For me, thanks to the speaker that spoke, I mean, I think it's consistent with the messaging I've heard. Since we last met, they were spot on as far as, kind of providing some real numbers and what it's like where they live. And I think that, regardless what the decision is, we addressed the elephant in the room last meeting, that in my view, this will not fix the situation, regardless what we do or recommend, should I say, because it's not that we do, we recommend and the county commissioners do. So I definitely want to keep that in mind, for future conversations, that, this will be yet another Band-Aid. I mean, let's just call it how it is. But if it achieves the objective to, start the process, that's something that we should consider, which is why we're talking about it.
Well, my position on this, I've lived here in Alamance County all my life, born and raised here, born in the city, and moved to the country. We're at a crossroads here of what we want to do. If we want Alamance County to become another Guilford or another Orange, then we can move forward with the 2/3 of an acre, leave it like it is, or we can try to preserve our heritage and our rural life. I've heard, all about the affordability of a lot. There is no affordability. It is what it is. Whatever you gotta pay is what you gotta pay. It's what I had to pay some 50 years ago when I come out here. I paid $2,000 an acre. I thought that was ridiculous. But if we do not do something to deter the amount of houses that are in developments, large developments that are going into our rural part of our county, then we're going to lose that. And I don't think that 2 acres is going to all what everybody's saying, because a lot of my friends, my farm friends are in the same. They'd like to see the 2 acres. Some would like to even see 5 acres. But I think 5 acres would be going a little bit far. So I support the 2 acres. When my daughter cut off a piece of property off my farm, I cut her 2.5 acres off. An acre of land ain't much. It don't give you much freedom. And a lot of people that move into the country from the city, that's the reason they come, because they're tired of living on top of each other. So, and we look at the small builders and what's this affecting them? We have these large contractors that are coming in and buying up all the pieces of property, where these small contractors don't have that ability to buy that much land up. So it's cutting them out of their chances to build. So I just think that this is something that's been long past due. The growth that's coming in the southern part of the county. If we don't do something, it's going to hit the northern part of the county very soon. So solely support us going to 2 acres. It's not going to be as much land taken out as we think, because 2/3 of the land right now is already under 2 acres because we're under watershed. So that's my position.
Got a lot to say, whether we should say it or not, it's one thing. I've been on this board now 5+ years, and I warned when we first come on here that you are looking at Morrisville and Cary coming right to your door, whether anybody really wants that or not. That's immaterial. I think it's going to be great. We already don't have county services. Everybody's complaining about the tax increase on our properties, the people that live here. $300-some thousand is not affordable. That's not affordable housing, whether it's 1 acre or 30,000 square feet of a lot. It's not affordable. That's not affordable housing. One way you can get affordable housing is if you have smaller lots, right? Smaller lot sizes. Well, then that brings you into our ordinances of community wells, community sewers, or city sewer, or city wells, or city water, right? That's where the affordable housing, it's the only way you're gonna get affordable housing, because that cost of going from 1 acre to 2 acres, that's not gonna, it's already not affordable at 30,000 square feet. The other thing is, like Henry says, we have critical watershed and we have balance of watershed. And I know probably about 4 or 5 months, this came up again about what is actually permitted percentages based on the health department. All right, and most of the lots weren't permitted at 30,000 or 1 acre or even 1.5. A lot of the ones out in the county were permitted at greater lot sizes. All right, so what the objective here is not to hurt the small little builders here in this county. Back home in Florida, I was a small little builder. All right, we lost out. Tell you where we lost out. We lost out to the big tract builders like Ruttenberg, Ryan, D.H. Horton, and it's what's happened in Mebane. And that's what happened in Morrisville too. It's not the small builders. It's not the small builders that we have to try to manage the growth against. All right, it's going to be the large builder. Yes, we have rural heritage. Yes, I'm all about the agricultural industry. How I grew up. How I love to have all my life too. I live out in Snow Camp. You know, I've got 7 acres. Can't keep grass mowed sometimes. Okay. However, all right. Yeah, you can go out the back door and take a leak if you want to. Okay, you ain't gonna do that in Morrisville or Mebane. Okay. So that's the objective. It's not the hurt. It's to manage the growth. All right. We've got in Siler City, we've got that chip Wolf Speed, and over in Liberty, we got the Toyota plant, which I guess they're not going to make batteries anymore. They're going to shift gears because that whole industry is going down the toilet too. All right, but that growth could come. That growth could come to southern Alamance County, but we do have the watershed issues, and it's increasing the lot size in the county where there's septics and wells from 30,000 to 1 acre to 2 acres. It's not going to make a difference. It's not affordable. You're not going to be able to do it. That's all it is to it. That's my piece of it, and that's how I'm thinking about it. Amen.
I have nothing to say.
Well, good. Old business. We can conclude with Article 4.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do not have any additional amendments that I have drafted up for Article 4, but I'm happy to take a look at Article 4 again if any other board members have anything they'd like to. And then I'm not sure if this is in your packet this week. It would just be leftovers from your previous packet. Yeah. A lot of code enforcement in there. But like I said, I don't have any additional changes.
So everybody good with 4?
Yep.
All right, we'll move on to 6 then.
All right.
Cause 5 is just
5 is just blank. 5 is reserved for hypothetical snow camp zoning, and Article 6 has 14 parts. But after last meeting's discussion, it was pretty clear that the priority was going to be subdivision ordinance, which is 6.9. So we are jumping ahead a little bit. If I had time to do 6.1 and 6.2 and 6.9, I probably would have brought it for you, but it takes a while to amend an ordinance, and we probably would be in here till about 11 o'clock tonight. So having said all that, Article 6, Part 9, subdivision regulations. I want to just, before I kind of go through each section by section, I want to just kind of note here that what you have before you is such a substantial rewrite and reorganization of our current ordinance that the format that I presented with a strike through of old language and an underline of new language is not present. This is really just almost an entire new organization of the ordinance as it would be adopted if it were to go through as it is. Having said that, so beginning on page 1 there, with the opening page, This is something I would like to do with all of our sections moving forward. I've created an index of all the sections of the ordinance and then corresponded them with a page number. As the ordinance lays out right now, there's no index, so you just kind of have to thumb through. If you're an average citizen looking for the regulations that might pertain to you, you kind of just have to thumb through. This would provide a helpful guide for each section. Section 6.9.1 creates the purpose and goals section of the ordinance. The goals there are virtually identical to what the lot size subcommittee presented previously. This section would allow the planning board some flexibility in the criteria used to seek development conditions on new subdivisions that, according to this ordinance, would be subject to your review and approval. And we'll get into those details as we go on. Section 6.9.2, most importantly, this defines what a subdivision is, as opposed to what a subdivision isn't. And I know y'all heard me mention this a couple of times. The current ordinance just starts out with the exemptions. Well, this actually tells folks what a subdivision is, including the fact that a subdivision is not necessarily the creation of a new lot. It's the creation of a new development site, whether for the purpose of building or in the future. And that's just taken straight from North Carolina state law. Section 6.9.3, these are the same exemptions that we currently have, and they're in line with North Carolina General Statute 160B-802A. Section 6.9.4 clarifies that plat approval does not automatically result in road acceptance per NCDOT standards. This is taken from the current ordinance. Section 6.9.5 allows for variances and appeals to the Board of Adjustment. If those are needed. This language here is very much right in line with Article 2 of the UDO as well as state law. So section 6.9.6, this is just standard language about the aggregation of subdivisions, aka you might call them phases. 6.9.7 outlines the penalty for violating a subdivision. This subdivision ordinance is taken pretty much verbatim from 160D-807A. 6.9.8 allows for the pre-sale or pre-lease of lots. This is also taken from the general statutes. It's not in the current ordinance, but I think it does provide a helpful guide for folks and for developers that just want to make sure that certification is there. If they begin phase one, for example, if they complete phase one, they can do a pre-sale or pre-lease, and that capital allows them to move on to additional phases, or at least helps with. Section 6.9.9 carries over the general platting requirements from the current subdivision ordinance, but adds the requirement that the following properties shall be shown on preliminary and final plats. Those are farm districts, county parks, public or private schools, and houses of worship. And the reason this is here is those are the specific types of properties that the lot size subcommittee recommended establishing the 50-foot buffer for. Everybody following me so far? We're about halfway done. 6.9.10, and let me catch up to just to make sure I'm on the right page. This section features all existing environmental related aspects of the plat recorded process, but adds subsection 6.9.10.2.1. It's a lot of numbers, so I'll just make sure to mention it's on page 9. And that institutes the 50-foot buffer from the property lines of the previously listed properties, the farm districts, the county parks, the schools and churches. 6.9.12. This more clearly defines the criteria for development of class 1 and 2 private roads as well as public roads. This is especially important in our instance because the North Carolina Fire Code standards apply in Alamance County when new dead-end subdivision roads exceed 500 feet in length. This change would incorporate those standards while the current ordinance does not. In other words, we deal with this quite a bit where a developer will come in and the rules basically say installing the road up to NCDOT standards. And some know, some don't, but the reality is Alamance County has also adopted the fire code standards, which require an expanded width and right of way for dead end roads according to those fire standards. So this actually just brings that directly into the ordinance. So you don't have to look in two places for it. And then it also has more detail about the required maintenance for private roads. Section 6.9.12. So this establishes different types, different criteria, you might say, different definitions for different types of subdivisions. So you would have traditional subdivisions. Those would feature the 2-acre minimum lot sizes that have been talked about so much. You would also have cluster subdivisions. Those would feature smaller lots and require a certain percentage be reserved for open space. But then kind of a third option, you would have what we have here, hybrid subdivisions. Now, we can change any of these names. But as of right now, the hybrid subdivision would feature lots anywhere between 8,000 square feet on the low end to 2 acres on the high end. The difference here would be that the process would require planning board review and approval. The planning board would also, in this process, be able to negotiate and agree upon conditions prior to final approval. So just hypothetically, someone comes to the county and they say, I've got a proposal for a subdivision. It's gonna be 1.5 acre lots. I'm looking at about 10-15% open space. Your ordinance says 35. It's not a traditional subdivision. It doesn't meet the standard of a cluster, which we'll get into. Their third option is to come before you guys, and you guys can say, you know, the 10 acres of the 10% open space is good. Let's see if we can get that up to 15, or let's plan a buffer here, or let's, you know, look at the configuration of lots. If those conditions are agreed to, you guys approve, the developer agrees, that would be the final approval. Section 6.9.13. This section revises the lot size regulation to feature the new minimum size of 2 acres for properties that are on well and septic. As the previous section outlined, such 2-acre lots will be part of traditional subdivisions and they could be approved administratively. Other smaller lots, lot sizes are still allowed based on their well and septic connections, but they would either have to be part of cluster subdivisions or hybrid subdivisions. And they would be, and the hybrids would be subject to the planning board review and approval. Other standards related to the calculation of lot areas, setbacks, configuration of lots, utility verification, those types of regulations in the current ordinance are simply carried over to this ordinance in that section. Nearing the end here, section 6.9.14 is where you find the specifics on cluster subdivisions. Lots in cluster subdivisions could be as small as 8,000 square feet. And per the guidance of the last meeting, the percentage of reserved open space would be 35%. The setbacks here, and this is something that I would like you guys to kind of dig in on and maybe we can debate it. The setbacks here would be virtually half the required setback standards for traditional lots. There's not necessarily a goal in mind with putting that in as a draft. It just kind of matches what you get with a smaller lot, smaller setbacks, you know, kind of a compacted neighborhood kind of thing. But again, totally open to debate. And then last but not least, the final section 6.9.15. These are the approval procedures. They're virtually identical to the current system for traditional and cluster subdivisions. However, subsection 6.9.14.2, which is at the very back of the very end of the document, page 28, would allow for planning board conditional review and approval as recommended by the lot size subcommittee. So I know that's a lot. This pretty much doubles the size of the current ordinance, but it also does incorporate all of the recommendations of the lot size subcommittee. I'm happy to take any questions you might have. I also want to note that the Carolina hurricanes just sort of gone.
Yeah. What about any edits that we may have or found? Do we want to go through those now or?
Yeah, I think now would be an excellent time to go through that. And now it's going to depend upon the process. And so just to make sure everybody's on the same page, all the board would be doing in this situation is making a recommendation to the commissioners. The commissioners have ultimate say. So kind of the tentative timeline we've talked about is take a real serious look at it tonight, make some recommended corrections, edits, changes. We can go back and revise those and prepare those for the June meeting. If everything is hunky-dory at the June meeting, then it would move along to the commissioners. But the timeline is completely up to you guys. I would recommend we do some additional tweaks. I've kind of talked about this is maybe 85-90% complete after I sent it out on Friday, of course, I noticed a few things that I would like to change as well. So I would certainly recommend have a good thorough debate tonight, ask questions, make some recommendations. We can tweak it and bring it back in.
Okay. Cause I've got a list of some things that are just minor edits, like
Okay.
grammar type stuff.
Yeah. perfect.
And also some things I've got some comments on too.
Okay,
So I guess we can kick it off there.
absolutely. Yeah, and that's the thing too, any kind of grammatical stuff, formatting, any of that.
All right, so page 2.
It's of roads.
Yep, you saw that too then. Exactly. Let's see,
What was that exactly?
page 2. So there's this, I think, looks like the second sentence in that paragraph. These provisions are also intended. And it goes on to say for the coordination or roads and highways. I think it should be
okay.
coordination of roads and highways.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. Sidebar comment, not really an edit. I know there's a section of goals there outlining intents of the ordinance. The one I highlighted and wanted to emphasize was allowing for affordable home options.
Mhm.
So, like I said, it's not an edit, it's just a comment that's one of my main focuses is to keep things affordable as much as possible.
And that was also, I mean, that was, like I said, that's, pretty much verbatim from the,
Yep.
lot size subcommittee.
Yep, like I said, not a change.
Yeah.
Just wanted to highlight it. The other one I found, I think I had a comment on this one. Page 8. I had highlighted, so you got 6.9.9.5.2A. Permanently preserves. Would that, how would that be achieved? Is that,
I think that should be permanently preserved.
okay,
That is a classification of agricultural use.
okay, so that's like the voluntary.
Yeah, so it's a step beyond voluntary ag. I don't know the specifics of it. Might be a tax department question. A permanently preserved status of a farm is.
Okay. So that's a certification or something that runs
It's
with
a
the property.
certification that's a very high threshold.
Okay.
On district.
Page 10. The title for that section for stormwater drainage. Stormwater is one word.
Okay.
It's not 2 words, it's 1 word. That same page, second paragraph. Where a drainage way, water course, or stream, it continues, shall be shown on preliminary plans. Final plat and shall be designated A. Should that be designated as a drainage easement?
Sure.
Okay. And then that same paragraph, that last sentence where it talks about ditches or drainage ways and subdivisions shall be sloped so as to not create dangerous conditions. I would suggest that we add to also not create erosion and to keep flows below erosive velocities.
Did you get all that in?
So maybe not verbatim, but just to include a provision in there to not create erosion and to keep flows below erosive velocities.
Keep flows below erosive velocities.
Yep. Sorry, as a stormwater engineer, that caught my eye.
That means put your check dams closer together.
That's one way to do it. Yep, yep. Yep. All right. Same page, number 10, at the bottom of page 10. The 50-foot buffer shall be measured on a horizontal plane from the bank of. I think that should be clarified to be the top of bank. Because that could be left to interpretation.
Yep.
All right, next page 11. Dead end public roads. it references the 2018 North Carolina State Building Code.
Mhm.
Do we want to make it a little more general and just say the most recent version of, that way you're not having to chase that update?
Yeah.
Whenever they do the code change?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I'm really glad that you pointed that out because, yeah, I thought about that too, and my thought was just reference the document that the regulations are coming from, so.
Yeah, make it a little more
Yeah,
versatile.
and I think it's a really good point too, because from what I understand, so if you read through there, if you pick up that document, the road standards are actually in the appendix. And I believe that the draft revisions being worked on right now on the state level is gonna move those regulations from the appendix to the main body of the document. So in
Okay,
that case, just generally saying the most recent standards would probably be a good idea
cover that.
in anticipation of that change.
Okay.
And I can run that back by our fire marshals as well, get their input on that.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Page 12. Subdivision Road Minimum Construction Standards Manual revised July 2020. Similar thing. Do we want to revise that to say,
Most recent.
yeah, most recent copy? Kind of a blank, just keep the dates out of it and just say most recent.
Yeah.
perhaps.
It's not a bad idea.
Okay,
I think they went 10 years between revisions there, so.
gotcha.
2010 to 20.
Yeah, that document, this is kind of antiquated. Yeah, before they updated it. All right, so the same page, next paragraph, new private road subdivisions may not embrace or abut any part of a proposed thoroughfare or street shown on the Alamance County thoroughfare plan.
Mhm.
What does that, help me understand what that sentence means.
That is taken directly from the existing ordinance, and
Mhm.
I searched for probably half a day trying to
Okay.
find the Alamance County thoroughfare plan. I don't think it
Okay,
any longer exists.
Okay.
I think maybe there was a thoroughfare plan
At one
sometime
point.
between the 70s and the 90s, and that language has just kind of migrated with the subdivision ordinance changes throughout the years. The only thoroughfare plan that I found was an NCDOT document from 1994,
Mhm.
which put Alamance County in Region G
Mhm.
and had the Region G thoroughfare plan that included a cluster of about 6 or 7 counties. I'm not 100% sure what to do there, but, if we're going to reference any kind of like a transportation plan, it might be best to reference the Burlington Grand Metropolitan Planning Organization's comprehensive transportation plan.
Okay, so the thoroughfare plan was some sort of plan for long-range planning for roads and pathways throughout the county, right?
Are you asking me or telling me?
I'm just asking. That's a question.
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically the phrase by saying embrace or abut any part of that plan, is that more or less saying that any new private road should not be done in conflict with that plan?
I think that's the intent.
Is that the intent
Yeah,
of,
I think
okay,
that's the
because that's what I
intent.
was trying to understand what
Yeah.
that meant. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Do you want to change the word to say the other plan, not just,
GMPO,
right?
comprehensive transportation plan.
I
I don't
guess
know, Ian.
it tripped me up. I was just wanting to understand it. So,
Ian, when a subdivision proposal comes through, have we ever said, hang on a second, let's consult, let's see. if this is a
No.
thoroughfare transportation plan, because I mean, it's kind of a dead letter in the ordinance. It just doesn't, I'm not 100% sure why it's
Track
taken
the
out.
whole sentence.
Matthew, could we strip it?
Is this where if subdivision minimum construction standards would come into play or not?
The paragraph before the one we're talking about, for private roads, references that document. Okay. So yes and no, there would be two separate documents. You've got the subdivision manual from NCDOT.
Right.
But then this Alamance County thoroughfare plan, I'm not sure if that's an NCDOT document or not, if it still exists, if it's outdated.
Chuck Edwards may know.
I asked Chuck.
Oh, you did?
He
Okay.
didn't know.
He did not know.
Yeah.
All right, never
He
mind.
sent me a link to other transportation plans, and he
So
also,
here, go look
he
here.
also
All
said
right.
the modern version might be the GMPO, Comprehensive Transportation.
I guess if we can figure out if that's what it meant and add it, but if not, I don't propose taking the whole sentence out,
Yeah.
because that could potentially cause.
Because otherwise it's saying make a comparison to a plan and that plan doesn't
Plan
really
doesn't
exist, right?
exist.
Yeah.
Yeah, to is one of the many examples when I said, yeah, we probably need to take a look at
Yep,
the ordinance
yep.
and kind of update
Well,
it.
it's a rabbit hole.
All right. Um,
I'm really impressed that you caught that too, because it consumed several hours of my life trying to figure out.
well, I'm just glad I'm not the only one that didn't understand it, because that's good. All right. All right. Page 19. When you went through presenting these changes, you mentioned the category or how they're named or titled for these types of subdivisions
Yeah,
could be modified. I had a comment saying that I think there might be a better way to categorize them.
okay.
I don't have a suggestion to that,
Yeah.
to that, but maybe, I don't know, after we talk through everything here and take it home, but take it back home again, maybe something could be fleshed out. I think it could be clarified a bit more.
Sure.
Page
6.9.12, page 19.
Yeah.
You're talking about the traditional subdivision?
Yeah, like the traditional, I understand the concept of the hybrid. I don't know if traditional or cluster and hybrid. I don't know if it's the titles I'm having an issue with or the way they're described. I don't know, it seemed a little,
Well, cluster is kind of the term of art for those types of subdivisions.
Right.
Pretty much anywhere you go. The only other variation of that is like, people call them conservation subdivisions.
Mhm.
But that's maybe 10-15% of the time. Cluster subdivisions are pretty well accepted, understood term
okay,
for those types. But yeah,
makes sense.
traditional, hybrid, it's totally.
I don't know. I'm gonna chew on a little bit more to it. Like I said, I didn't have a recommendation, but when I went through it the first time, it's like, I feel like there could be a little more
Yeah.
clarity here, but
You could call them conventional,
General.
standard subdivisions.
perhaps, yeah.
General subdivision, a general subdivision.
Yeah, maybe. You know, I don't want to get too nitpicky on it. It
Yeah.
just wasn't immediately clear to me, so. But I understand what it's trying to achieve. All right. Page 21. In the middle of that paragraph, it says minimum easement area sizes for property utilizing off-site disposal systems shall be no smaller than 5,000 square feet, though additional area may be required by the health department. Are there any, are any access requirements and repair area requirements stated or outlined somewhere else, either in this document or somewhere else? Cause I know there's a easement width of 20 feet, but what about, you know, is that along that 20 feet, is that considered to be a traversable 20-foot path? You know, where it's not too steep to drive a truck or equipment down through. So, oh, go ahead.
Can we address?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't want to be out of order.
No,
No,
you're
go ahead.
no,
A couple of things. We wanted to ask about that 20 foot and see if it could be reduced to 15 feet, which would be the state standard.
Oh, really? Okay.
As far as the supply line easement section.
Yeah.
The state does have a approval for off-site septic systems, which is what these cluster developments would be utilized.
okay, and then it would fall to those
And
standards.
they do have access requirements,
Okay,
road standards,
Okay.
minimum widths. If they abut a road, an existing road, you don't have to provide access, but if they're backing off the road, to cluster them together, you have to build it.
right, because the easement for the supply line might be a little different.
It might
than-
be different,
Than the
right.
access path to get to it.
And that's
Okay.
why I wasn't asking for 15 feet for the
Yep.
access.
All right.
To see if we could reduce this by one.
Got it. All right.
I appreciate it.
Yep, makes sense.
Yeah,
Okay,
great point.
okay.
Ian, you know of elsewhere in the subdivision ordinance where there's a required section about an access basically you're talking about like a maintenance easement, like an access easement to the, you know.
To the 5,000 square foot.
No, the best I can go, but it just wants the access and maintenance to go in that 20 foot easement.
Yeah.
I think we currently have it separated into access versus maintenance. It's just all lumped into that 20.
And it may not be required if it goes through a state process and then they handle those requirements through that. That's fine. I just didn't know if it was outlined somewhere or caught somewhere.
So
So
whenever we've seen that, it
Sounds like
is
it is.
mapped.
This
Yeah.
doesn't address the access. It just talks about the sewage. Is that in?
this won't, but to be permitted, it has to go through the state,
Yeah, well, yeah,
right, for offsite. Yeah. So then the state would catch it before they would, I guess, give approval from that standpoint.
I can get you that approval if you want to look at it and consider,
Yeah, please.
incorporating some of that language.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do anything more stringent than what the state,
Yeah.
And if it's easier just to default to what they require, that's probably the better way to do it. Let's see. Same page, section 2, 1 dwelling per lot. Accessory structure,
Yeah.
that's a good spelling.
I'm sorry, I think I lost my place. What page are you on?
It's kind of
21.
21 and number 2.
So it's misspelled.
It
Yeah.
should be accessory, I believe.
Accessory structures.
Third line in the paragraph.
Ah, okay.
Yep.
You run this through like an AI program or something?
I did not.
It's a keen eye you got.
I did not. I guess I was bored. No. All right. So, let's see. Page 23. Item number 5, width and depth.
Yeah,
Does any of that need to be edited or
yeah,
reconsidered?
I think it does, and I think that's a really good item to key in on. So I was joking with Rodney when we talked about this. You read it and you feel like you gotta kind of do underwater upside down math, because it says lot width shall be no less than 40% of lot depth, but no lot shall be required to be more than 150 feet in width. Lots over 1 acre are exempt.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I've got a note here on doing something about this. I mean, if the standard moves up to 2 acres and that stays the same, then this is irrelevant. Get
To a point. You still have minimum
account
road
for
frontage
some
and
kind
stuff.
of flexibility.
Yeah,
I think it's better, if you're gonna talk about, the ordinance is going to control for lot width and depth, it's better to just use a firm number and say it must be at least boom. As opposed to you calculate the length and then you multiply by ×4 and there's kind of some roundabout ratio that you got to do math on.
yeah. I think it's just trying to keep the lot shape proportional
Right.
to a certain dimension without really outlining what that minimum dimension has to be. Okay,
I think there is some value in having corner lots be wider than others. But it says the current language is corner lots shall have an extra width of 20% of the average lot width within the subdivision. So that forces somebody to calculate up all the other lots and then come up with a figure and then add 20%.
yeah,
When it's, to me, it should just be kind of a firm number.
yeah,
And you already, the ordinance already has an enhanced setback for corner lots or side lots that abut a right of way, so you've already
yeah.
got.
We have 2 streets,
an
so you got
additional
2
spacing
restrictions.
built in,
Yeah,
yeah.
all right. Let's see. Page 25. Top item number 10.
Yeah,
So I read through that and I had a question. How is this being regulated or addressed in areas that remain as whole properties, clear cut and forested, and then immediately subdivided and developed? This has been apparent in multiple areas in recent history.
sure. And in those cases, honestly, it wouldn't. So if an existing 100 acres today is in a forestry management plan.
Mhm.
And the owner says, you know what, I got all this timber on there, I'm gonna go ahead and harvest it under the guise of my forestry management plan.
Yeah,
And then as soon as that's done, I'm gonna sell it, and if somebody wants to develop it, they can.
that's on them.
That's the system. So Rodney and I actually talked about this. This is, if this were to be added in there, this would probably be a relatively minor effort to keep some existing vegetation and maintain trees and forested areas and things of that nature. But if the goal is, the reason I put that in there is if part of the overall goal of what the aim is here is to preserve natural areas, forested areas, agricultural type settings, then having some sort of clear cut provision might be a small incremental step in that direction.
Cause you know, for certain situations, there's elements in these type of documents that say if it's part of a common plan of development, and you can kind of track that common plan of development based on history of the property
Yeah.
or if it's phased out or that sort of thing. So I don't know if there's an element in that regard that could be applied to help kind of bolster what this is trying to achieve.
So can you elaborate on that a little bit when you say?
So, like, you know, because like you said, if they do it under the guise of the forest management plan, and then a month or so later, it's immediately subdivided, like, I'm a very large proponent for free use of property, but I don't know, is there some sort of way we could protect the vegetation? Because really and truly, if they have to clear cut it and then subdivide it, and then if they put landscaping or required landscaping or buffers back in place, it could really save them money if they left that vegetation in place.
Sure.
From a development standpoint. But I didn't know if there was a way to tie common plan of development, but the challenge with that and the con to that is trying to make something retroactive,
Yeah.
and that's not really good either.
Yeah, and like I said, Jim, in my thinking on this, it's a marginal step towards that type of.
Okay.
I don't know if there's a silver bullet.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, you'll notice there at the end of the first paragraph, it says vegetation may only be removed in order to install roads, utilities, and elements critical to the future development of lots. So
Yeah.
the encouragement there is, okay, of course, yeah,
Mhm.
clear out the area where you're gonna build a house.
Right.
That's all road, but the backyard, the side yards. you
Yeah,
know,
the
other-
perimeter areas, that sort
Yeah,
of thing.
would
Yeah,
ideally remain undisturbed.
okay. I had a question on page 26.
Mhm.
The designation of open space, the 35% threshold. Was that part of the subcommittee recommendation?
That was part of the discussion at the
Yeah.
last planning board.
Okay. That I was not at. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. And then the last comment / question I had, the very last page.
Vaughn's fine. Vaughn plucked that.
It was somewhat of an average between some that were not so much and some that were too much.
Yeah.
That's just.
Okay.
Where it seemed like a good compromise at the time.
Gotcha. And then the last question I had, page 28. So the statement that says, receive final approval from the Alamance County Planning Board. My question is, does the planning board have sufficient authority to approve things like this? How does that relate in contrast to only making recommendations to county commissioners? Is it inherent by nature of the acceptance of this language that authority is delegated to the board? That's my question.
Yeah, excellent question. So what that would do from a legal perspective is give you what is known as administrative approval.
Okay.
Any board can, after proper procedure, after proper amending of the ordinance, any board can be given administrative approval procedures. So for example, cell towers, I believe, if they're over a certain height, have to come to the planning board for final approval.
Okay.
Most administrative approvals are done by administrators. But basically, this would just turn that one element of the administrative approval over to the planning board. And state law also gives you the authority to negotiate conditions related to the development.
Yeah, so
You can't say, build a space rocket.
Sure.
It's got to be related to the development
Right,
and
right.
in keeping with some of the purpose and goals of previously established plans. That's why there's a purpose and goals section.
Yep.
As well. So yes, you would basically just be getting an administrative approval power. There's already legal precedent that gives you the authority to negotiate conditions, but the conditions that you agree to have to be in line with the established purpose and goals. So all those things just kind of work together.
Okay. No, I was just curious because I know a lot of times we say we only make recommendations to the commissioners,
Right.
which is all fine and good. And when I just saw the authority to approve, I was like, well, can we really do that? But I didn't know how it worked. So that makes sense. I'm done.
Excellent.
Outstanding job.
Excellent questions.
You miss anything, Henry?
I, I'll say it might get a little smaller into it.
I just have one, page 9 for easy fun. It talks about the vegetated buffer. So what if there's no vegetation there? Are we gonna require any to be placed there? I didn't see any language about that.
Yeah. So the only thing that's there right now is it says the buffer areas shall preserve natural features such as trees, grass, shrubs, ponds, streams, rivers, lakes, and similar natural elements which are of value to the subdivision in the county, so on and so forth. That's really up to the discretion of the board and then ultimately the commissioners. So if you wanted to go as far as to say you must plant a buffer in XYZ pattern, you could do that. If you want to be relatively easy and say just preserve what's there, then that's kind of built into that area.
I kind of like the loose language, but I was just making sure that grass would be appropriate, like if there's nothing there.
Right.
Still a buffer, but it's just grass.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the other piece was, I think you might have just answered this one on that very last page, 28. The criteria that'll be used to make such approvals. Or is it based on the opinions of the current board members at the time? On 28, the approval process.
Well, there's definitely some relative subjectivity in there, right? I mean, let's say that this is the policy and the proposal comes before you guys today, and then there's all new board members 10 years from now, and a similar proposal comes. You might take a different look at it and want different things. But if you look at point number 2 there, under the planning board review and approval process. During their review, the planning board may negotiate conditions related to the development with the developer. Such conditions may include the preservation of open space, the configuration of lots or open space, natural buffers, planting trees or other vegetation, installation with an A, sidewalks, trails, Rodney caught that the other day. Sidewalks, trails, greenways, pedestrian crosswalks are similar community assets which fit the environment of the proposed subdivision. So you got some play in the joints there with the term similar community assets. So a picnic area, for example, right? Or, you know, you might have a proposal that comes before you and there's a creek that runs through the property and they've got their open space elsewhere and you go, well, how about your open space over here? And you more or less create kind of a neighborhood park that features that creek. If in keeping with the goals and the predetermined criteria of things that you can negotiate, which again must be related to the development.
And I guess just to piggyback on that, and let's just say we couldn't come to a consensus or an agreement, they can bring it back 6 months later.
That's right. Yeah, if you look at those final two, 1 or 2 points there, planning board cannot agree, and developers not agree to the negotiated conditions, the developer shall have 6 months to revise the proposal and bring it back for secondary consideration.
And if it's a no, then it's a no.
Yeah, that's a good, I mean, we can, you might be able to add a third step in there, like if it's a second no, then maybe it's 12 months or something, if you wanted to.
So is that the consequence of the 6-month time frame? Is that their plan would just be entirely denied? Like if they didn't come back within 6 months?
Right, that's the way I was reading this. I was just.
I would assume so, yeah, if they don't represent it within 6 months, then.
So what if after 6 months they came back and retitled the subdivision and brought the same thing back for review?
Well, then I would imagine you guys probably reach a similar conclusion, where you say, okay, well, we've looked at this before. And
But they, I mean,
last time
the
around-
now granted, they changed little things here and there, but they would still,
Oh, sure, yeah.
so if they were planning to make changes or try to get to a point where the board would approve
So-
it, the 6 months is really inconsequential.
So I think in that situation, so if you look in the previous section where it talks about the overall approval process, they've got to submit preliminary plans, then they've got to submit the construction drawings, and then when they get to the final plat stage, or before the final plat stage, so they would have to go through technical review committee again. They would basically have to begin all. the way back.
Basically, the clock starts over.
Yes, all the way back at the start.
Okay, not just for that piece, but
Because
they have
there's
to
an
start back there with
administrative-
process item
yeah.
number 1.
Yeah, because there's an administrative review.
Okay.
They
We would
to-
have our certain checkpoints even before it got to you guys.
In other words, just a whole new set of plans.
Exactly.
Okay, that's all right. Then that's the incentive to keep them engaged. Yeah.
And also to, have Matthew, like earlier, that you still, the appeal process is still in place. That you could, still could appeal this onto the Board of Adjustments.
That's an excellent point. Yeah, so, yeah.
If, you know, you still have that next step. Over this board doesn't approve, you can, appeal it to the Board of Adjustment.
And then can they further appeal to the commissioners if needed?
And that's.
No, it goes.
Or is that where the buck stops?
No, it goes to the court after the Board of Adjustment.
All right.
So that's,
To go to the commissioner, but since the Board of Adjustment says.
Yeah, it's no longer their headache, it goes to the court.
That's what it stops.
so that's on number 4, that's their next step on that last page on 28, number 4. Their follow-up on 4.8 or 4.1 would be the Board of Adjustment.
If they feel that, that your, denial of their subdivision
It's unreasonable.
was unreasonable, was not in keeping with the ordinance, then they would appeal to the Board of Adjustment.
Does that need to say that in here?
It may need to say that, it's implied, I mean, like I mentioned earlier, the earlier section adds for, or, allows for variances and appeals. Again, you would be making an administrative decision, so they would be appealing your administrative decision.
That's actually in the early part of our ordinances. If we're done past it, that's already in there.
That's already stated somewhere else.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
already there.
Got it.
That allows that to happen.
Okay,
Otherwise it'd just be copy and paste.
I got you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Anthony, what page was you on that 50-foot,
9.
Not sure, think, maybe wrong use, not since they're actually, but, there were some, discussions on the court, deal about the 50-foot variances, buffers, and whether, the road
constituted a buffer.
constituted a buffer. And so, do we need, we've got here is, 50-foot buffer of vegetation should be maintained on both sides of the, this is on the stream, so, but when we talk about the buffer, or do we need to specify that that has to be vegetated and not a road or a parking lot or whatever you would consider. Because that was the thing that was brought up, because there was a dispute as the road was the buffer. And they said it wasn't the buffer.
I remember what you're saying now. I think it was a road could be put in the buffer, and that was allowable, but you couldn't build anything. Remember we had that discussion last week?
Yeah,
So if we want the buffer to be strictly vegetated buffer between these things that we mentioned, then we need to be sure that's clearly stated in there.
In this particular section or somewhere else? But this says vegetated buffers established.
Yeah, the heading of that section is vegetative buffers established. We can mention it again, you know, for example, where it says shall provide for a 50-foot buffer, we could say 50-foot vegetative buffer. And then the very next sentence is
Let me get.
page 9, right in the middle there.
Okay, we get right.
6.9 and 10, 2.1.
Okay, go ahead.
So, so as Stephen mentioned, the title of that subsection is vegetative buffers established. At the end of that first sentence, near the end of it, the third line, we could amend that to say 50-foot vegetative buffer between said facilities and the development within the subdivision. But if you look at the next sentence, and we touched on this a moment ago, these buffer areas shall preserve natural features such as trees, grass, shrubs, ponds, streams, rivers, so on and so forth. So I think it's pretty strong in that it has to be vegetative and natural. But if you wanted to add
I think it
vegetative,
was one of the things that was brought up in the litigation is that it wasn't specified that it could not include a roadway.
And you're referring to that example that was emailed to us
Yeah,
in that case study.
yeah, you've seen it.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's what I'm,
Yeah,
so
I'm
I
trying to remember.
would just, maybe we just need to add that, you know, that road right of ways cannot be included in this buffer. Just for clarification.
Yeah.
What do you think, Matt?
you don't have the actual road or the road right of way or both?
Yeah, the actual road can be in this 50-foot buffer.
I'm gonna say either road right away or road, because usually your right of way is there to help manage the road and keep it clear and whatnot. And that would conflict with trying to maintain a vegetative buffer.
Yeah,
You want a buffer to be planted, you want a right of way to be cleared. So if you have right of way within your allowed buffer area, that's kind of a conflict of the intent. So I would have maybe, if we want to outline that, just say the buffer shall not be used for access or transportation purposes.
Okay.
I think that would cover it.
Okay.
Next,
So one thing I do want to dig in on is the reduction of setbacks for cluster subdivisions. That could be a big deal. I don't know how y'all might feel about it, but
okay.
I want you to at least take a look at it and make sure you would be comfortable with it. Or which one down? Page 25. Right there at the bottom. Setback requirements, front right of way line 15 feet. Front yard on a cul-de-sac or a parking lot 10 feet, rear property line 10. Side property line 5, and side abutting a right of way 10. Current is 40 or 30 from the front.
Do we have a cluster currently?
Yeah, we do have, the ordinance allows for cluster subdivisions, but it doesn't get into detail about
Setbacks.
different setbacks or required open space or any of that.
How are there, I think just to follow up, do we have any existing cluster subdivisions now? That we use as a reference or a guide?
Yeah, Summerhaven, landing at Summerhaven.
So I'll be curious to see what,
Some of those lots are near 8,000 square feet, right? That's just south of Maverick.
They went to an engineer with that. They probably are.
Those are also on city services, right?
There's city
City
water.
water, offsite septic.
That's right, that's right.
Yeah,
What road did you say that's another?
Let's spell it Covington Dairy Farm. 119.
Oh, it's part of the old Covington farm.
but other than their offsite septic areas, I have no idea what the plan is for that open space.
I don't think there is one.
Doesn't include any off-road dirt bike traffic.
It's a real neighborhood asset. A dirt. So your traditional, your standard setbacks now are, between 30 and 40 for, the front right of way. 25 for a side property line abutting a street. 10 for a side property line not abutting a street. 20 for a rear, but you can reduce that all the way down to 3 feet for an accessory structure from the rear property line. Those are on page 22. Cluster subdivision setbacks are on page 25. It's basically half.
Oh,
The only question I have, and which I think you said something earlier, like the side property line is only 5 foot. If you have 5 foot on each side, that's only 10 foot. Is that gonna be enough? Is that gonna be the fire code to let allow? That's not even, that's not fire accessible.
there are houses built that close now.
Oh, absolutely.
Right behind me.
There are lots of it. There are many.
All these buildings touch.
are many subdivisions built that way.
Yeah.
Macintosh is like that. They've got a.
But I think it's worth exploring and asking the fire marshals.
I'm not saying it's safe. I'm just saying it exists.
Right.
Right. But we also, if inside the city here, you have fire hydrants and stuff that's accessible.
In fact, that's true.
We're talking about rural here, and you got fire trucks and the water tanks operations, it will, but, we might want to just reach out to the fire marshal and just ask his opinion on this. Does he think this is too tight?
How close is too close?
I would definitely like to hear his recommendation.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point.
It's getting off tight. We promise.
And again, that would just be the.
The shorter one's on fire, that beside it's gonna be all hot.
Yeah.
No, decided.
So that, as the minimum, they wouldn't be required to build to that dimension, but it's small.
Well, if you let it, it'll happen.
Quick question, was Summerhaven the one by DR Horton?
Yes.
Okay. Across from Roland.
Just south
Yeah,
of that.
yeah.
All right. Got
The one across from Roland is, in City 11. There's one just south of that. That should be the one that's more of a cluster subdivision.
Okay.
So their water is city water, but their sewer is pumped away.
Yeah, I don't see the houses, but I can see all the test pits for the.
Community lots.
All right.
So as it goes to an open space on the same property or what?
That's much all that. I've seen signs out there, $200,000-$400,000. That's important.
Especially 7 1/8%.
Correct. It's unreal.
Make it what? AO. W.
Oh, you can't see the house there, but yeah, I can see all the test pits for the septic.
All these
So where are the houses?
cluster subdivisions.
In the dirt.
Yeah, over here and then on the other
Basically
side.
looking at like community sources.
Correct.
Are those regulated and all by the other departments in the state? Or is that something that has to be incorporated into the ordinance? Or is that regulated through?
I'm near 100%. So
The
yes.
community subject.
Community septic systems.
Okay.
It's regulated through the state.
It's right here.
I mean, the county as well in some parts of it. Yeah, we monitor, but most of the, like Allen, for instance, when you get to a certain size limit, it has to be engineered. Then the engineered plans go through the engineers to the state.
Is there something
No,
that
it's
is
great.
something that need to be in this ordinance that says that it has, that we need to say that it has to comply with those?
His grandpa.
I don't think
You don't think so? Okay, I just,
That's law,
Hot dog place.
so.
Would you guys foresee any issues with, so let's say you have cluster subdivision and the balance of 10 acres is out there as kind of community open space. That 10 acres serves as the offsite septic area. But there might also be picnic tables or walking trails or some type of kind of community amenities. Obviously not development per se, but foot traffic, people out there, dual use.
So as you're saying, no, I don't have a problem with that. There are limitations and they would be built in Yeah, I don't think the state approval as well, but certainly if they kept it under that number, we were a part of it. There would be restrictions.
Could it be,
Some of those require a spray system, right? Over top.
Well, the one at Summerhaven subsurface, it's just very large systems that serve a select number of houses each one. I know Guilford County was sort of the pioneer with these off-site summer field area. And they, a lot of times are built to be sort of a scenic asset to the, so it can sort of pastoral, they're mowed, they're maintained. They wouldn't want horses on them and stuff like that, but
One question I have, I guess if we're using Summerhaven as an example for cluster and off-site septic treatments. If if that project is on City of Mebane water, would it not have to have been annexed into the City of Mebane in order to have access to tap into their water?
It may be in the ETJ.
Well,
But it would still be an annexation, right? It would be annexed into the ETJ.
We approved it.
Double rate.
We approved it, so it's not in the, it's
Okay,
not in the ETJ.
that was my, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Municipalities can provide water service outside their ETJ.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It has
rare,
specific
but-
provisions.
Okay, because I was under the impression that to have access to city utilities, you always had to annex. But
I think it's
not
a very commonly used hook,
yeah,
grab property in, but I don't think it's required.
got it, okay.
Yeah.
So they pay a different rate, right? Okay,
Yes.
all right. Because I was gonna say, if they were annexed, well, then they would approve, City of Mebane would have approved the plan, but that's not the case here. The county approved the plan and they just got permission for Mebane water.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
Got it.
And we verified the existence of the public water system that granted them the ability to make lots as small as they were.
Got it.
Just to be clear, all the heartburn about all this rewrite is about the lot sizes on well and septic properties, right? Or
Correct.
standalone wells, standalone septic. Not communities, public water or septic system, not community, public water or wells. And, not community or public sewer and water, right? Those standards are not changing. That's what they've been here for. I don't know when this ordinance came out, before I got involved with this thing.
Originally, it was July 3rd, 1972, so.
We're still only talking about the heartburn that everybody has is about lot sizes on private wells, private septic systems on their property.
Right.
All the stuff about cluster development is still gonna be community. When we talk about RVs and mobile home parks, aren't they generally on community, or are you building stuff where everything has a private well and a private septic? I'm asking y'all are in that business.
public water and the community.
Okay, so we're not talking anything outside of private
Single.
septic systems, or private wells on a piece of property.
Yeah, the
That
difference,
in mind,
the difference would
heartburn
be,
part of it.
the difference would be, so if they want to do the traditional subdivision, as we're calling it, those have to be at least 2 acres. They can be approved administratively. If they're gonna go below 2 acres, it has to be a cluster according to the ordinance. And we can also approve that administratively. If they want to do something outside of those 2 criteria, they gotta come before you guys for ultimate approval. For this hybrid correct situation.
There we go.
And we've still got exemptions in this for family on family land.
In this, no,
We need to,
But we're gonna have it in there before it goes to the commissioners.
if you want to see
We-
that change, then
we
we can absolutely.
we need
do that.
to.
Absolutely. Another thing too, that might be useful is one, and I'm kicking myself because I didn't put this in there, but I do think we need to distinguish between minor and major subdivisions. And it's probably gonna hinge upon, and be right in line with the road classification. So a class 1 private road is up to 4 lots. Class 2 private road is between 5 and 14 lots. And I think that's a good place to have the dividing line for minor versus major
Yep.
subdivisions as well.
15 plus is major subdivision.
Well, the 15 plus is the public road.
Right.
Which is a whole different, ball of wax. So if you wanted to make that a dividing line as well, to say anything that's 4 lots or under, don't have to abide by the 2-acre minimum, perhaps we could do that. If it's a family specific, type of an exemption, we could do that. We probably want to verify direct family member and define who is a direct family member. And the state has definitions that they, so the option's there for sure, if you wanted to make a little bit of a carve out for those types of family situations.
And, you know, sometimes you want your family right there where you put your arm around them.
Right.
Sometimes you don't. So if you live on 3 acres and you want to put child in the backyard, that's your call to make, but they're still gonna be there. And if you deed that property to them and they sell that property, then, you know, every time you get together for Mother's Day, Father's Day, Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter, whatever,
You got a new family.
potentially, or you might have a conversation that, you know, I wish you'd come to me before you just sold that house. and I could've
Sometimes
controlled the
things
neighbor.
don't work out like you think
That's
they
fine.
will.
Yep.
But we do not want to put ourselves in the position of telling grandpa or daddy that children or grandchildren cannot have a place to live because there's no available dirt. You got dirt and your place to live, no problem.
So would you like us to add in some draft language that allows for that?
I would absolutely like to have
Yeah,
it.
I'd agree with that.
And to tell you the honest truth, the reason we hadn't had talked about it before, because I thought it was already there.
Okay.
But I've been so busy watching Gunsmoke and eating bonbons, I hadn't had a chance to read through every word.
Your analogies crack me up sometimes.
So if we allow,
I mean, the language doesn't have to be good. But the bottom thing, the bottom line is that any kind of variance or any kind can come
That's right.
before.
Yeah.
This body or the commissioners and asking for
That's right.
permission to do this. So it's just, it's.
there's a provision for variance in here already.
That's
Variance,
correct.
it's in there. I mean, you know, you can, it's there. It's already there. That you can ask for it. But you can write the language in there that it's family or whatever.
Yeah.
But anything that you want to ask for, a variance against anything in this ordinance can come and be asked for. May not be
Well-
granted, but you can ask for it.
Are we gonna add in types of subdivisions a different category for? Not that it's not one of these already in there that allows for this homesteading or division of family property? And call it. In other words, you got traditional cluster and hybrid. They called my lot the Edgar Pritchett subdivision, which was, it's one house, one big lot cut out of
Yeah,
that parcel of land.
right. Yeah, well, you gotta give it a unique name that's not like any other subdivision, whether it's 1 lot or 100.
Right, but I'm saying it technically is subdivision
Correct,
under the rule of law.
correct.
So do we need that in that section of this ordinance
So are you asking about the protection for the family? type
for
of
allowing
situation?
for, you know,
Just a handful of lots?
right,
Yeah, and like I said, I think we can do it, one of two ways. So I do want to add in here, almost kind of like a subcategory of the traditional subdivisions,
okay.
major and minor. And maybe you could say major subdivisions, which are 5 lots or more, have to be at least 2 acres. Minor subdivisions, 4 lots or fewer, do not have to be at least 2 acres each. You could go that route. Or you could establish the family subdivision option, in which a family member is just subdividing land for their heirs, for their direct family, whatever, but we would probably want to define family or direct family member, and then have some sort of verification as we approve it, that is in fact, there is in fact a familial relationship
I think that's what.
that
you
allows
need.
for the
It
flexibility.
needs to be the family. It doesn't need to just be for 1 to 4s, because then you could get a whole lot of 1 to 4s
Right,
rolling in there that are gonna use that exemption to get smaller lots.
And then it seemed like I read something about there not being a limit on how many times you can subdivide for family land. Is that, am I making that up?
I don't know that we have anything in that, like that in our ordinance. But if you've read that somewhere, it's probably aimed at stopping the type of workaround that you're talking about, where you eat the elephant one bite at a time, right?
If
Or
you've
like-
got a non-conforming road, you can take a lot off of it every 2 years or every 3 years. That sounds like where you're going with your thought.
Mhm. It seemed like it was like, okay, so right now, I only have 2 kids, well, I have 3, but 100-acre lot divided by 2. Then the grandkids come around, they say, we're gonna take those same 100 acres or that's 50 acres, divide that by 2. Give it to their kids. And then you see how I'm saying, how you can keep breaking it down, but it's still family land. Like, is there a cap or can you just keep doing it until the land is gone?
It doesn't get below 2 acres.
Right. Keep it all the way down.
Below 2 acres.
So that's a good question. I mean,
Because I guess
So
they're
about
very.
7 generations from now, they're still subdivided.
Yeah.
And then tracking that, we're gonna track it.
I think that's a good question. I mean, you kind of just have to ask what might be reasonable in those types of situations. Creating 3, 4, 5 lots for each one of your kids versus creating 20
So we
lots.
just said every 2
If you got
For them and their friends.
20 really close cousins,
But no,
Yeah.
type of thing.
no provision. So we were just reading that part that said it can be divided every 2 years. I mean, is that every 2 years to infinity?
Is that the current ordinance on private roads? Okay.
Non-conforming.
I suppose so.
Because that's why I was saying it would fit to the 2 acre minimum, technically, or
Yeah.
1 acre minimum, or whatever it may be.
One thing to think about too is there's a state law workaround, you might say, where if you are dividing and then passing on property for the purpose of settling in a state, it's exempt from any local government subdivision ordinance.
Maybe that's what it was.
So grandpa owns 150 acres, and he wants to cut it up into 100 lots and pass it along to, if he has 100 family members in his will, technically,
Became.
the law would protect that. So that's always a final pull of the parachute too for folks if they want to leave it in a non-traditional kind of subdivision situation. Not a lot of people know about that feature of law, but it is in the ordinance. It is right there.
Man, I'm trying to think of what the road was. When you got a road that's cut in to a house. And then on that driveway, it goes off with another road, just say,
A spur.
a spur. That's what, I couldn't think of it. I couldn't think, what do we have that addresses that spur road?
Yes, we do. So I think that we have a provision in the existing ordinance that basically says any private road must connect directly to a public road accepted for state maintenance. So you can't do private road and then private road and then private road, because by the time you get all the way to the end, because maintenance is what it is. And people neglect it and they have a great homeowners association today, and then 10 years from now, nobody comes to the meetings.
Yeah.
By the time you get to that end, the end of that 4th or 5th gravel private road, you can hardly get down it. So yeah, the ordinance does say it has to connect directly to a public road.
I couldn't think of the name of what it's called. It's a
Yeah.
spur road, yeah. Yeah, that's an issue that even if you, like in your family land, like mom was saying, you got this house, one goes, you got a driveway that goes out here to this house out here, just sitting out in the field, 3/4 of a mile. And then you decide you want to cut up another mile off of that road.
Right.
But it can't happen, right? That's what you're saying.
Correct.
Well, if you start up there at the public road and start upgrading and get it up to fire code back to the last
Yeah,
driveway,
but
you can
just
do that.
driveway back there.
Correct.
That's right.
Yeah.
Anything else, Mr. Chair?
Other than the announcements from the planning director.
Okay.
I had a couple of questions.
Yeah.
If we can.
Or Stephen, either way. Yes, sir.
The diagram of the different dimensions and stuff for driveway configurations on page 12.
Driveway configurations or?
I'm sorry, hammerhead and cul-de-sac, yeah.
Yes.
Um. The bottom right, acceptable alternative for the hammerhead.
Mhm.
You got the 70-foot dimension,
Mhm.
horizontal going left and right. You got the 20-foot dimension for the width of that section.
Mhm.
The piece that goes up, there's no dimension for how far that's to extend.
Yeah.
Well, it's 50 feet. Or if you come to the other side of it, it's 70. You see how they've got the 70 marked?
Yeah,
Mhm.
so
Well,
it'll be the same as that.
If you take the lower edge of where you're backing into, pull it straight across and measure up to the end of the road, that's 70 feet also.
From here. You're talking about from right there.
That is exactly what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a good point and a good question. This is literally copied right out of
Yeah.
the,
I think that needs to be clarified.
literally copied right out of the fire code attendance.
Yeah,
I think you need to show that dimension.
it does.
Okay. So just to make sure I'm looking at exactly what you're looking at, on the acceptable alternative to 120-foot hammerhead in the bottom right.
This here,
That top branch.
yeah, the piece that extends to upward.
Well, it's 50 from one point or 70 from the other, whichever.
In other words, when your road comes up there, you got to have 50 foot in two directions for them to pull up back in.
Oh, no, I
Or pull
fully
in and back
understand.
out.
Yeah, I fully
But,
understand.
but you're right, it does need to be clarified.
Yeah.
Put 20 foot on the upper part, just like on the bottom part, on the picture.
Well,
You're saying 20,
Well,
you can do that.
The width of that 20 feet, I can see how that can be somewhat implied.
Yep.
But knowing that it's supposed to extend 70 feet up,
Yeah.
leaves a little bit to be desired.
Yeah.
have specifies a 20 up here too. Verification.
And the other thing too, the top right one,
Yeah.
minimum clearance, you got a 20-foot dimension there,
Mhm.
but there's no arrow on the left-hand side of that dimension. It's missing the extension line for that dimension call out.
The Y.
Where his mouse, his cursor was.
Yeah.
There should be a line with an arrow on the opposite side of that to complete the dimension call out.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. Just like the 20-foot on the 60-foot
Oh,
wide.
up here.
Yeah.
You're talking about up there.
Yep. Yeah.
What about this one?
Which,
This one.
well, that's somewhat questionable too, but I wasn't gonna get too far into the weeds.
Okay. Steven, you've been digging in the dirt.
You have to understand, mechanical drafting degree, civil engineer degree, and work in land development. I've seen it all, so plans and notation and stormwater.
In other words, the guy,
It's a bad
the
mix.
guy could just have me said, doesn't have a number on it. I just made what I wanted to make.
Right,
I
right.
think as soon as erosive velocities was suggested, we were so far in the weeds, I pulled a couple ticks off myself.
You're welcome.
I think you set the tone.
Hopefully they were still crawling around.
I do
right.
like.
I would say 4 feet per second for water flow, but let's just say erosive
Thank you.
velocities, yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
right,
but
so
is anything else?
Can you-
Yeah, I'll close it.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right, so now, Matthew,
Incorporate those draft changes and bring them back at the next one.
I'm done.
Okay.
Next meeting. All right.
So are we good with
Right.
Before you start, what are we, is this piece of this document gonna be golden? After you make the changes, we come back in June, is that when we?
we're gonna kick this can one more time in June. And see if we can come to a consensus and give the commissioners something to earn their pay with.
Yeah, and you can further amend it in June. But just understand that any amendment you propose will, once it leaves the planning board, will obviously make those amendments, then it just goes to the commissioners. So if it's adding an entire new section, that's tough. If it's a minor tweak, like setback going from 15 to 10 or something like that, that's easy. So just keep that in mind. You can amend again at the June meeting, but you might just want to make sure it's manageable so we can easily incorporate those changes before it goes to the commissioners.
as it stands right now? we want to talk about this again, I know, but we have the 2 acres in here to be the new lot size.
Well,
We will discuss.
that's where we are.
I just want to be sure.
And like Bill said, that's a standalone well and septic.
Right.
If you've got public water, community well, whatever, or if you've got public sewer or community sewer or off-site sewer,
It doesn't
that ain't what we're talking about.
And if we amend it, it'd just be striking through 2 and putting 1 or putting nothing, or whatever it is, existing, right? Which would take us to have to re-review the whole document.
Correct.
Right, if we change it, okay.
All right, so yeah, we'll make those changes and bring it back for the next meeting.
Now you're up.
Thank you, sir. Just a couple of quick items. So, I know I've emailed, many of you several times about this, but the UNC School of Government is gonna be doing planning board. He's in the midst of doing planning board trainings for any planning board members or related staff. At several different opportunities. There are, and are just going to be 2 online options. We were taking a look at, after a few emails, we're taking a look at the online option for May the 16th, I believe it was. Well, that filled up. So the UNC School of Government said, okay, we're gonna create a second online option date, May the 30th. We went to register for that this morning. That is also filled up. So we're on the waiting list. So, if they have some vacancies or whatever the case may be, we'll try to make sure that those who have wanted to participate get in through the waiting list, signed up, ready to go for 30. If anybody else wants to be on the waiting list, again, it's an online only course. It's only 1 to 4:30 in the afternoon on the 30th. Or if they create a new online date, it would be that 3rd date. But, I just want to make sure to make that announcement in case anybody was interested, beyond just the email discussion about it.
Do you know if they offer PDH credits for that?
I'm not sure. What is PDH exactly?
Professional development hours.
Oh,
As a licensed engineer, you have to have 15 per year.
okay. That's a good question. I'm not sure.
Realtors have a similar requirement. So
Do you think we can find that out?
Well, they offer the AIE.
SCP, yeah,
is that for planners?
mostly for planners.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
The only other thing I wanted to ask was about, what else is in the UDO? So we had done articles 1, 2, 3, 4. We kind of jumped to do 6.9 tonight. But, I think we want to keep the pace of taking a good look at each section piece by piece as the months go by. So obviously we're going to consider 6.9 again at the next meeting, but do you want me to also prepare 6.1? My original thought was since Article 6 contains 14 parts, to do them 2 at a time. 6.1 and 2, and then 3 and 4, and so on and so forth.
What is 6.1 is?
1 is general stuff, so it kind of establishes some of the procedures that you find in the rest of Article 6. But it also features regulations on temporary RVs, temporary housing, for example. A reference to stormwater and buffer requirements of the Jordan Lake rules. Relatively mundane things, but it's important.
Or 2?
What is 6.2?
We can find out. 6.2 is that storage manufactured, or no,
Dead storage of manufactured homes.
or no, adult establishments, sorry.
Oh, okay.
That's 6.3.
What do you think?
Adult establishments and sexually oriented businesses.
Oh, wow.
That's Monday.
In the country. I like to. What is it, 1 and 2 you said, recommended, and 3 and 4? Is that what you said?
Put them together.
Do you think we can finish this up and do 1 and 2 next month?
I mean, part of it is gonna be, depends on how long you wanna be in the meeting. And, 6.9 taught me that, when further you get into this thing, the ordinance amendments are pretty tricky. I didn't have a whole lot of trouble with 1 through 4, but I'll tell you, 6.9 kicked my butt a little bit. That's why you received your planning board agenda packet at 7:30 on Friday. So, I'll let you know if it becomes too much and maybe we need to just really look at it one small section at a time, I'll let you know, but I can at least try to go for 1 and 2 at the next one.
Okay.
Seems reasonable.
So we're pushed out to 2 years now.
That's right. That's right. So, but that's all I've got for any kind of announcements or updates.
Anything else?
Got moving with adjourn.
Second.
Got a motion is second. All in favor? See you. I'm not gonna ask if there's any opposition.
When I end my meeting, I said, all those opposed.
6.9.
You can stay, but I'm going.
Everybody is for 2 acres. That'll be the point of discussion. Good idea, sure.